So yeah, thanks for joining obviously my session today, talking about making the most of global games distribution and what's out there in the market, and yeah, how you can I guess make the most out of it. So to get started, a little bit about GameBake and who we are and what we're doing. So GameBake is a one-stop solution for distribution globally. We bring together all the various technologies from the SDKs from the platforms, from ad integrations, purchases, analytics, and more. And we've bundled that all into our single open source SDK that we call Kill. And that integration basically will help you and enable you to take advantage of the wide variety of distribution options that are out there in the market, and help you build and execute a successful distribution strategy. The technology is completely platform agnostic, so it'll work no matter what your development environment is, and you can integrate Kiln into your single game, into your tech stack, and utilize the GameBake platform to distribute outside of the core platforms of iOS and Google Play, and take advantage of what's out there in the market. So how we kind of see distribution, we look at it as four separate pillars. We start with stores, web, social, and apps. With stores, some of them you might be familiar with. Obviously iOS and Google Play, potentially sort of Samsung Galaxy Store and Huawei App Gallery, and some you may have only heard about today as well in various markets around the globe. We also have web platforms. Mobile and desktop web has had a good resurgence since its heydays back in Flash gaming, but it's really a great platform, and that is growing, and we'll talk about a little bit more later on as well. For social platforms, I'm sure many of you have heard of the wide variety of huge platforms out there. Of course, Facebook, WeChat, and so on. But most of these platforms now have an instant gaming platform as well that you can take advantage of, and they have massive scale and massive opportunities or ways to get into various markets such as China and Russia and so on, in a slightly simpler way as well. And applications as well, something maybe many don't think about, but there's dedicated gaming apps out there, some with hundreds of millions of monthly active users, as well as a plethora of media applications and entertainment applications as well that are really sort of taking advantage of gaming and bringing them to the huge audiences that they have within their respective markets as well. So the challenge that we see, and I think everybody experiences with distribution, is how complex and how complicated it can be. Of course, you start with your idea or with your game, and from there, you really need to decide on sort of what your path is, and whether you're self-publishing or you're going to be utilizing a publisher. But then diving into it even deeper, into that wider distribution. Deciding what tech it is that you want to build your game in, that is a very important piece to think about, because certain technologies don't support certain platforms. For example, Unity, which I'm sure we all know and love, is a great platform and a great engine, obviously, for many mobile games. But if you're looking to take advantage of social platforms, of web platforms, and so on, it's really going to kind of count you out, and that's something to think about when you are deciding how you want to create your game and what really works best for you and for your distribution plans. Something else as well moving forwards, thinking about what platforms you want to be distributing to. Of course, iOS and Google Play are kind of the go-to, but what about browser? What about social platforms? What about other app stores as well that are out there? And how are you going to, integrate into these and integrate into these markets? And that leads us, quite nicely as well into what markets, should we be sort of focusing on? Whether you're working with a publisher, self-publishing, you're always going to have some sort of strategy behind you to think about what markets you want to be moving into. What markets are your core markets where you focus your marketing, your user acquisition strategy. But as well as that, thinking of the wider distribution opportunities, which markets, could really sort of open the door for your game. And we've seen some talks today already that, already distinguish what sort of genres of games really work within certain markets and, what games don't. And that's something to really think about when you are deciding on your distribution strategy. And then moving forwards, from there, there's a lot more to think about, of course, beyond that. And, moving forwards is then finding the right partnerships, be that a publisher for iOS and Google Play, or, looking further ahead as well for web distribution or social distribution, and many more, other channels that are out there. Finding the right partnerships is definitely, core to getting your strategy right and making the most out of these markets and platforms for your games that you spent a long time and had a lot of hard work put into them to make them what they are. And once you've got there, that's only half the battle. You've now got to do the tech integrations, which is even probably the most complicated part. A lot of various different SDKs from the platforms, of course, whether that's from web, whether it's from social, or whether you're just sticking to the Android mobile markets. There's so many app stores, out there, and all of them have their own individual technologies that you need to integrate into your games. And that can be quite a time-consuming and painful process with a lot of them. And then looking forwards as well, how your game actually monetizes, whether it's via just ads, just in-app purchases, or a mixture of both. That's something to really think about, as there's a lot of platforms out there that don't support the major networks, or sometimes don't support any networks at all, meaning it's very difficult to monetize via advertising. And some just don't even support purchases as well, not in sort of the standard, I guess, ways that make it easy for us as game developers as well. So that's something to really think about, because some platforms that don't support purchases might have millions and millions of users, but it just isn't viable because you haven't got the right partnerships in place to enable purchases within your games. And then looking forwards, to analytics as well. You need to be able to track, as we all know, how your games are performing, how many users you've got, where the money's being made, where the users are dropping off, and so on. So something like that, which I think we take for granted, on iOS and Google Play, where a whole ecosystem is already built for us. It just doesn't exist in a lot of platforms outside of that, and it's something which really needs to be thought about before you move into, I guess, getting to the point where you can finally distribute your game to the wider market that exists out there. So the distribution landscape at the moment, of course, you've got your core platforms, and there's some others in there, I would say, as well, depending on your game and your distribution. But for mobile specifically, iOS and Google Play are the core and the go-to platforms for, I would say, 99% of us, if not 100%. And they should be. They obviously have massive scale. They're in most, markets globally. They're great platforms that have, amazing ecosystems that have been built around them. And you should be taking advantage as best you can of them platforms, whether you're self-published or you're working, with a publisher to help scale your game for you. But there is a massive, amount of alternative platforms out there. And as you can see, the actual effort to get onto these platforms, and sometimes just the awareness of them as well. You can see how the effort goes up depending on sort of the platforms you're looking to target, and the awareness of them as well, depending on, social networks. Everybody has heard of, obviously, Facebook and WeChat and the likes. So it's quite, I think, well known that these platforms, have the ability to scale games upon them. but actually getting onto them platforms and scaling games effectively and successfully, that's another story, and it's something to really sort of, I guess, dive into in a little bit more detail from there. So the opportunity with, I guess, distribution as a whole in the market is pretty vast. This is just a few platforms, that we're working with, and which you guys, hopefully have heard of, or at least some of them anyway. But as you can see, there is hundreds of millions of users across these platforms, and these are new users that you could be taking advantage of, and that you could be pushing your games in front of as well. And this is something to really think about hard, I think, when having your game, whether it's via a publisher, as I said, or yourself as a self-published game, when you're putting your marketing strategy together, and you're deciding what markets you want to really sort of focus on. How can these various other, alternative app stores or web platforms or social platforms really help to bring your game in front of as many users as possible, and in the most effective way possible as well? Because user acquisition, I think, as we all know, can become very expensive, and you're always fighting as well against the bigger players in the market, of course. But these platforms that you see here, and many others as well beyond them, really do kind of show that there is much more of an opportunity for maybe smaller developers, as well as the much bigger developers as well, to take advantage of free user acquisition channels in some cases, as well as maybe simpler and somewhat easier acquisition channels where there isn't as much going on, and there's not as much to fight against to get your game in front of as many eyeballs as possible. And at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want our game in front of as many users as possible, so we can scale it as widely as we can, and as successfully as we can as well, to make the most out of it. So the market as a whole, this right here is showing the mobile market, and the growth that is expected over sort of the coming couple of years that we've got now as well. But what we probably don't look at as much is how that kind of really sort of splits down between iOS, Google Play, and alternative platforms as well. So for here, we're looking at alternative stores, and as you can see, iOS and Google Play still make up the majority, and that's why it's always important that we are taking advantage of them two platforms as best we possibly can. But there's a healthy portion of the market still that is downloading, and they're finding their games from alternative platforms, such as Huawei App Gallery, for example, where Google Play isn't really available at all, and of course in China, on Android, Google Play just isn't there. And that's where users are finding their games, on these alternative platforms. And as you can see, as time is going on, it's expected to grow, and there's a massive revenue opportunity for anybody that's really sort of looking to, I guess, scale games that they've had running over years into new markets and in front of new users. There's a great opportunity there, as well as new games that are hitting the market and want to be, I guess, as cross-platform, for example, as possible. So anybody and everyone anywhere can download their game and play their game, and spend within it as well, because that's what they want to be doing. They want to enjoy playing that game, and they want to progress and enjoy it as well as they can. And some of the, I guess, forgotten platforms out there, I mentioned earlier about web, and obviously back in the good old days of Flash, when I guess web was a lot more relevant, and you kind of see in them days come back now with resurgence with hyper casual games and so on. But browser as a platform still, is massive, really, and I think it's something that a lot of people have forgotten about and feel that there's nothing there for them to take advantage of. But browser platforms have seen great growth over the last few years, especially with the advent, of, I guess, better technologies, allowing games playable in mobile browsers as well. And, we've seen some great growth there. And I guess as well, this last year and with the global pandemic, it's really sort of opened the eyes of a lot of web platforms and, more traditional media outlets. And they're now looking to expand, I guess, their offering to their audience into gaming as well. And these guys, they want to take advantage of the legit IP that exists out there, and they want to take advantage of the the top games that exist on the app stores and have them playable for their tens of millions and hundreds of millions of users that they get onto their websites every single day. And for them, it's an amazing way for them to retain their users longer, and just engage with them in a much, I guess, more modern and more friendly and exciting way. And for the games and for us developers, it really opens the door for a huge opportunity to get your game in front of an audience that you probably wouldn't have actually been in front of before. It would have been, brand new eyeballs and brand new players to come and play your game. But of course, with web, various technologies don't work properly, and that's where I guess we come in as GameBake and what we're trying to solve with our SDK. But also something that should be thought about at the beginning, because the opportunity for browser distribution is great, and you should really be looking to take advantage of all the platforms that you can to really sort of scale and spread your game as best you can globally. So yeah, distribution, it's a difficult one right now. It's a very fragmented market. It's one that I guess doesn't have that sort of ecosystem that's built around iOS and built around Google Play at the moment. But it doesn't mean it's something that you can't jump into. It doesn't mean it's something that you can't take advantage of. And it doesn't mean it's something you shouldn't be thinking about. And, that's why really and truly you need to be planning your distribution from the very beginning. Not just your marketing strategy, not just your core platforms and your core markets that you want to be going after, but how you can extend the lifespan of your games, and how you can extend the reach and the scale of them as well by taking advantage of the many platforms that are out there and that exist in markets globally. And then choosing your partners carefully, whether that was, of course, to be us, or whether it's somebody else that you work with, as there's, many great companies and technologies out there to help you take advantage of various platforms. And it really, should be considered carefully when you're choosing your partners to make sure that you're making the most out of your games and you're getting the most out of the markets that you're getting help to be distributed into as well. Whether that comes, in the form of help with localizations, help with licenses within China, for example, help towards marketing the games and, getting, I guess, them in front of the users, finding the right people to work with, and, finding as well the right technologies that you need to make distribution work and happen for you is, massively important. And you really should consider and make sure that you're speaking to the right people and you've got, I guess, the right plan so you can scale successfully within these various markets and upon these various platforms. And of course, once you've got your game, hopefully once you've got them bits together, you can start thinking and watching, your game distribute globally and across the various platforms that exist out there. So yeah, really think about, as I said, what you want to do from the onset. Think about how you want to distribute, where you want to distribute to, what markets you want to distribute to, as well, as all of that is important to know from the beginning so you can make your life, a lot easier as your game scales and as it progresses through its lifespan. And also, it will pay dividends later on down the road with, new opportunities opening up. And that's really important because you want to be able to take advantage of any opportunities that present themselves to you and for your games and being able to do that quickly and move forwards and really sort of take advantage of that is a great position to be in, rather than sort of having to struggle to find how you're going to integrate or bring your game to any of these new platforms and partners. So yeah, that's my session and my talk on distribution. Thanks for obviously joining, and hopefully it was informative for you guys, and we can hopefully speak anytime. Feel free to reach out. You've got my email just there on the screen and some of my social channels as well. So please feel free to reach out anytime, and yeah, discuss anything, any questions you have around distribution, around various platforms, and not just how we could help you, but also just in general. Really, I'm more than happy to help out and speak about it anytime. So yeah, please reach out. Let's discuss and talk about how we can, I guess, make distribution simpler, easier, and a massive opportunity for everybody and for all of us with our games. So yeah, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed, and enjoy the rest of the event as well. I'll see if there's any questions at all. No. Cool. Don't think there's anything at all. Any questions anyway from anybody? So hopefully I did my job and explained things relatively well. But yeah, feel free to reach out anytime, as I said, and happy to answer any questions that anybody has. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of your weekend. So hope to speak to you soon. Thank you.